I think the military is trusted because people's frustration, anger, disappointment with the military engagements are directed rightly, I think, at the political leaders. So I think people have divided between the political leaders that have brought us into the longest period of war in the Republic's history, and the people that are asked to fight it. And well, you may disagree, but I think that is true. I think the populace, and I think it shows up in public opinion. I mean, how else do you explain the gap between the fact that people don't like the Afghanistan war, they hated the Iraq war by the end of it, and yet during that same period of time, the military is the only institution to gain trust. I think also there's two more aspects to this. One is that from the sheer perspective of competence, the military has performed quite well in this decade insofar as they have done what we have asked of them. Now, that's not to say there have not, obviously there was Abu Ghraib, there's a cruise missile strike in Yemen, which of course no one knows about, that killed tons of civilians. The drone strikes, which remain massively problematic strategically and morally and legally. But by and large, I think there's a sense, and I don't think it's an unearned sense, that the military as an institution has performed the functions of which it has been asked with competence. And that cannot be said of, say, the banks, right? I mean, just look at it that way, right? The banks are just supposed to do this thing where they take deposits and they lend out money, and they totally screwed it up, right? That's not the case for the United States Armed Forces. The third thing I'll say is that I think, and I read about in this book, there's tremendous, I use this term social distance as a kind of unifying feature to think about the ways in which the pernicious effects of having elites and the populace far from each other. And there's tremendous social distance between the elites in American life and the armed forces, and this is just an empirical statement of the fact of the percentage of members of Congress who are veterans, the percentage of those who are in the upper income echelon or high levels of education attainment in terms of what percentage of them enroll. And I think that has something to do with it too, because I think there can be a kind of, the distance, people make up for that distance by telling pollsters they trust the institution. And it's easy to say that because they don't have to do anything. There's this kind of bargain in the conversation that we have in American life that basically says, you know, there's a very small group of people who are going to bear this burden, very small group of people as a percentage of the population. And Afghanistan barely makes the headlines now. And so part of the way that I think we deal with this great cultural unease about that status quo is to say, yes, we trust the military, because it lets people off the hook from the very difficult process of grappling with the fact that we are asking a very, very small group of people relative to the entire population to bear a very, very heavy burden.